So, brief reminder, Mr. Hall was kind enough to come around and remind. So, if you are seeking to address this body, just a reminder that we'll need you to fill out a public input slip. I'll say it again later on, too. But if you'd like to present to this body for 5 minutes, you can do so by filling out a public input slip and passing it to the front. So another reminder with a minute to go, if you are seeking to address this body, you need to fill out a public input slip at the side of the room and bring it to the front. Okay, it is 6:30, so we are ready to begin this meeting. Just another reminder now that everyone's settled on in, if you would like to address this body, you need to fill out a public input slip at the corner of the room by this door. If you don't fill that out, we need to record it for minutes, etc. So please do us that favor. Okay, so with that said, I call to meeting this order of the Champaign County Data Center Activities Task Force. Could we please call the roll?
Rodriguez,
I'm here.
McCrory McKay. Esri.
Here.
Young. Rain.
Here.
Rice.
Here.
Sage.
Here.
Newell.
Here.
Eris.
Here.
Okay, with the quorum present, we can now move on to the approval of the agenda. Can I please have a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Right. Okay, thanks, Deb. Okay, so we are now to the portion of our meeting for, oh, I'm sorry. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Thanks for that, Aaron.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. So with the agenda approved, we can now move on to public input. I see no public input slips. There, okay. You sure can.
What do you do if all you want is, if you just have a question during the course of your deliberation?
Like during deliberations, I would write it down. Sure. So I would jot it down and email it to the committee and we'll get back to you. That's during the meeting though, just because we need to have an ongoing, forward motion. We're also going to have an opportunity to hear from the public on the proposals that we are making on August 31st. And we're going to be announcing a location for that at some point or another. Of course, not a problem. So we've got at least one slip, right? Dan, do you want to do the honors? You're closest to your mic, yeah.
Calling up Ruth Yance to speak.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So my name is Ruth Yance, and first of all, I would like to thank you for all being members of this very important data center task force. I'm pretty sure you did not have this kind of task or activity on your bucket list. So I'm very glad that you have taken this on, and we're counting on you to create rigorous regulations that protect our valuable farmland, that keep our utility bills from going even higher, that protect our Mahomet Aquifer, our valuable source of water for households, businesses, and farms, that protect us, livestock, and wildlife from unhealthy levels of noise and vibration. So this evening, I want to raise an issue that goes beyond Champaign County, and that is our interdependence with other counties, especially concerning water, our Mahomet Aquifer. Let's take, for example, Latham, Illinois. You've probably been reading about they're wrangling with a data center developer. Latham is in Logan County, and it has a population of 333 people. And I'm going to quote from the Pantagraph, the newspaper that services the Bloomington area and surrounding areas. This was from Friday. Quote, plans to develop the data center may include the annexation of land into the village to bypass potential regulations imposed by the county. So this is how the data center is trying to get around the regulations that the county was going to pass. So it's Hut 8 that's planning a data center of 720 acres just outside Latham. And now that people understand what's going on, they are starting to organize and oppose this at the county and the municipal levels. However, it's very possible that this data center will be built. Latham does not sit directly on top of the Mahomet Aquifer, but it's closely surrounded by the Mahomet Aquifer, and the city could access that water. And there may be other data centers in the state that are built and sit on top of the Mahomet Aquifer and jeopardize it as our valuable water source. So my question to the task force and to the Champaign County Board is, what is being done to coordinate with other counties in the state that also use water from the Mahomet Aquifer and may be approached by data center developers? We don't have the state to protect us at this point. As you know, the Power Act did not make it out of committee in the spring in the state legislature. So we don't have any state regulations to help us. So we're counting on you, our county, to do that for us. And I would also like to be able to count on you to coordinate with other counties in the state that are on top of the Mahomet Aquifer or can draw water from the Mahomet Aquifer. And I'd just like to diverge just a second. We know that it's not only the cooling towers of the data centers that use water, even if they are closed-looped. The much, much bigger issue is the indirect water that's consumed, the water that is used to fuel the data centers, to fuel the servers, and that comes, of course, from power plants. Coal and nuclear need a lot of water, while natural gas needs less. And I read this week that Meta made an agreement with the Clinton power plant. So nuclear energy, and the company is Constellation Energy, to buy its entire output of energy, plus an additional 30 megawatts. Yes, 30 megawatts, through future plant upgrades for the next 20 years. Of course, Clinton sits on top of the Mahomet Aquifer. So please do what you can.
Ruth, I'm so sorry. Ruth, before you sit down, Ruth, did you have an event that you wanted to shout out?
Sorry?
Did you have an event that you wanted to give a shout out to?
Oh, wow, thank you. Okay, here's a shout out.
In the microphone, please.
Okay. About 10 days ago, a friend and I had a teach-in at the Chicago Public Library because we realized that our friends and neighbors...
Public Library.
What did I say?
Said Chicago.
Champaign Public Library, because we realized that neighbors, friends didn't know what was happening at the county level, the state level, and the federal level. We're going to have our second meeting on August 10th. That's a week from today. Again, at the Champaign Public Library from 5:30 to 7:30. So please join us. We're all learning together.
Thank you so much. Anybody else seeking to address this body? Okay, seeing none, we can now move on to communications. Any takers? I knew we could count on you.
Yeah. Andrew with Prairie Rivers Network. Yeah, I'm not on the county board, so I can't speak to what the county can do to get other counties to protect our water. But they certainly don't have power over other counties because that's how it works, right? And the next layer of government up from counties is the state. So we do definitely need the state to take action if we want to be looking at power data centers from any scope larger than with what's within the county. So the most that anybody can do in this room to protect the Mahomet Aquifer from data center action not happening in our county is to support the Power Act to make sure we can get some statewide water protections in place.
Anyone else? Okay, the final thing that I would like to note before we move on to new business is just to note that I would like to draw the attention of everyone, especially in the audience, to the opportunity that we have to include in this ordinance a community benefits agreement. And those are, that would be accompanied by a community benefit agreement fund, right, that we can funnel directly into community programs that matter most to us. So those are going to be the focus of my comments tonight, but I also want to invite participation from others to join in. Thanks. Okay, so we are now moving on to new business. We think about how, do we have suggestions about how we want to organize this? I know we're seeking comments specifically on the noise limit and then all other requirements, though. Do we want to start from the top and work our way down? Do you have any suggestions, Mr. Hall?
No, I do remember Mr. Rain's request that we have something on the screen to look at. So we're set up for that, however you want to proceed.
We'd love a visual. And Andrew, were you thinking a presentation? John, walk us
No,
through,
I think, well, I mean, just having John kind of walk through what we've got here, kind of level set where things stand, I think will help us all see what we've got, see any gaps, and have like kind of a productive conversation to the actual draft document that exists so far.
On the memo, I directed the board's attention, task force attention, to 4 things which you have discussed previously and not really settled, or at least not that I know of. And first being the threshold between a regular data center and a big data center. And you remember this is one of the first things we talked about, and just based on some basic data that we could gather, the discussion centered around 24 to 36 megawatts. I would favor the lowest number just so we have more control, but I didn't get a clear sense of what the task force thought about that. The next thing, if I could go to page 17, was on the noise limit. And after the last meeting, I went back through my stack of references and realized that this 45 LDN, well, where did 45 LDN came from? At the last meeting, the task force was interested in something to deal with low-frequency noise because that is something that the Pollution Control Board noise standards are commonly criticized for. I don't know that they actually earn that criticism, but that's out there, and it is a concern. And so the task force mentioned perhaps World Health Organization might have a limit that we could go to. And in fact, I've looked at the World Health Organization's low-frequency noise standards before. They've had them in place since about 2018, and they use something called a 45 LDEN, which is they start at a limit of 45 decibels during the day. Then in the evening hours, it goes down to 40, and then for nighttime, it goes down to 30. And 30 is very low. If you think about what we know about these hyperscale data centers, they run 24/7 as far as we know. So having a 45 dBA limit in the day is one thing. Having having a 35 dBA limit at night is something else again. I don't know how a data center would manage that decrease of 10 decibels in their operations. But thinking 24/7, a 45 LDN is equivalent to 38 dBA every hour of the day. That is extremely low. Nonetheless, ELUC had at one point asked us, and Aaron, I may have given you a flashback on this, ELUC had once directed us to adopt a noise limit of 45 dBA for wind farms. And one of the main concerns about wind farms in the public is low frequency noise. Well, they were going to adopt just a 45 dBA limit. That was cut short when the state passed House Bill 4412 and said, no, the Pollution Control Board standards are the limits for wind farm noise. So that created this opportunity for the task force, 45 dBA or 45 LDE in. I'm uncomfortable with either one, frankly, because with the Pollution Control Board noise standards that we have now, the noise, we know what the noise limit is over 9 octaves, 9 different frequency levels. And if you add those up and do the math for adding up different noise limits, in the night, it comes up to 51 dBA. But the reality is that generally one of those bands ends up being the actual critical noise limit. If you read the letter from Michael Hankard, which I had attached at the end of the memo, Mr. Hankard, vast experience in wind farm design, his opinion is that because of the unique noise characteristics of wind turbines and those 9 frequencies that the Pollution Control Board limits, the actual noise limit on wind farms in Illinois, he maintains, is 45 to 46 dBA. And so while he wasn't a big supporter of ELUC's previous motion to go to 45 dBA, in his mind it wasn't really much of a change when you considered the actual noise characteristics. These backup power generators, which seem to be the main concern with noise, you know, a backup power generator that is not soundproofed, if you will, just a bare motor sitting out there on the prairie running at full tilt, the noise is much greater than any wind turbine would generate. And that's why one of the things I've added in here is that every backup power generator has to be provided with its own noise shielding and its own muffler. And that brings the noise output, as best as I can tell, down to about what a wind turbine would be. So if you think about the data center in Sangamon County with over 400 of these backup power generators, that's roughly the equivalent of 400 wind turbines on a much smaller piece of land. And of course, noise doesn't add sequentially. It doesn't really add together that much. But the point is, these backup power generators are a significant source of noise. Here's 2 different noise levels. The 45 LDE is really very low. This is like buying a car without having someone who can really advise you on the technical aspects of the car. I would like to see the county hire a noise engineer to actually draft a more thorough ordinance than this. Nonetheless, ELUC was prepared to adopt 45 dBA, so you shouldn't feel, you know, there's no reason for you not to propose 45 LDN if you're confident that's what you think it should be. I wish we had Mike Hankard here that you could talk to, but we didn't actually plan for that, so I hope you found his letter at least interesting, if not real useful. So that's noise.
That was a big one. Should we pause? Because I feel like I have thoughts right now.
Sure.
Thanks for that analysis. So this would move us to a single number instead of the range of numbers. But those range of numbers that's still the law of the land. That's what the Pollution Control Board says, right? So it just means that I can't come to you and say, if I, for some reason, wanted to measure one of those bands and I measured the band, I wouldn't be able to go to the county and say, hey guys, they violated this one band. The county is looking for, this single measurement. And I actually was going to propose something like this, not from a doubt of the Pollution Control Board standards, but simply most people are just going to get their phone out, download some app that tells them a decibel as a read. You know, like reading those frequency bands, I think, is challenging in its own way, in a different way. And so, from like a regulatory implementation, I do like a single number as a way to kind of get a reading. And if 45 is like the functional limit, as you said, the analysis showed the functional limit would be about 45 based on the fact that it would be breaking one of the bands or whatever you said there. Seems Seems fine to me.
And if, excuse me, if we say 45, and then I'm assuming we're going to have a distance attached to that in our setback, would be part of that.
Well, the current proposed separation to dwellings is 1,000 feet, which is less than what we would require for a wind farm. And we're expecting noise levels on par with wind farm. 1,000 feet is what Aurora used. You could go beyond 1,000 feet. We have that other catch-all that says if you need to go more than 1,000 feet to meet the noise standard, then you've got to go to that greater separation.
But it's measured edge of property is the answer to where this standard is enforced.
Or the residents.
Generally, it's the residents. Again, the way the Pollution Control Board looks at property lines, they go to property lines for small lots. If you've got a residence on 10 acres, and they're not going to go to the 10 acres, they're going to go to something less than that. It's that part of the property that is residential in use. And so it's kind of fuzzy. When we do wind farm reviews, we actually go to the dwelling. We want to make sure it's that at the dwelling. And for a small lot, the distance between the dwelling and the property line is maybe 50 feet, maybe 100 feet, not much more than that in any case. So that's a good question. Pollution Control Board goes to the property line. This sort of has the underpinning of the basic Pollution Control Board approach. And so unless we want to get really, really specific, we're going to be putting this 45, perhaps LDE in, together with what everything else the Pollution Control Board says. It applies to residential properties. We go to the dwelling.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, you're talking about residential. I wonder about schools or hospitals or anything else.
Schools and hospitals or other principal buildings. This would actually go to any principal building. So it would go to a school, it would go to a hospital.
How about a park? Or like just a space where humans are, wanting to be regularly to enjoy their lives?
Well, parks are not, I only know of one park in rural Champaign County, but we
That's a good point.
we could add parks. Let me take that back. I know of one public park. There are several forest preserve districts areas. And so
I might simplify and just say, why don't we just do the property boundary? The modeling that they have to do, we're asking them to do modeling, right? And that modeling will show like a sound map, and that map has instead of having to assess where residences are or could be in the future, just make them meet it wherever, so that nobody has to be like, I don't know if I want to go there because there's.
My concern about that is, are we going to treat a 1 acre lot the same as a 10 acre lot, the same as a 20 acre lot? Lots come in all sizes.
If there's thought going on here, would it be helpful to return to the first question that you asked advice on, 24 versus 36?
Well, why don't
Or do we
we?
want to spend some time here or circle back?
Well, let's finish this at least,
get
right?
the-
Like we're
Okay,
like
it
in the
seemed
middle
like we
of
were
it.
caught on something and we wanted time to think.
Yeah. I'm not sure I understand your, I guess whatever the edge of the property they own is, I want them to meet the limit there. It doesn't matter how big the lot is, right? I guess I just want to understand your point.
My point is, in a public hearing, giving someone protection of their 20 acres is generally not the same as protecting someone's smaller lot.
Why? I mean,
Just,
you still want quiet around your property. To walk around your property, using it as a park almost.
on the park, I think we could use the public gathering space definition from the carbon sequestration amendment. We could add that. If the committee wants to specify this is to the property line, then that's the way we'll do it.
Well, I just let's imagine there's a data center on the edge of town, and there's maybe potential for development around it. And I know not everybody wants development, but there's potential for development around it for one reason or another. If you don't establish this up front, that development then is not being afforded that possible development is not being afforded these protections.
Are you suggesting the noise limit applies to farmland?
I'm suggesting if we do it to the edge of the property, we don't ever have to worry about anything else, because if they meet the noise at the edge of the property, anything could happen outside of there, and they're meeting their limit.
You mean to the edge of the data center property?
Yeah. Is that crazy?
If you want to prohibit data centers, that would be one way to do it.
Because the number is too low?
Yeah, it takes hundreds of feet for this noise to die out, even with the sound deadening and the attenuation things at the data center itself. It's going to take hundreds of feet for that noise level to decrease to this level.
Can I input? First, I want to appreciate you giving us, the letter from Mr. Maynard?
Hinkard.
And then also for the WHO documentation. First of all, I wanted to ask, why not measure in dBs, though? Why only dBAs?
It may be dBs. That's one thing I have to get.
Yeah, that would be nice to get clarification on. I actually
More
was going
clear
to
on.
ask if there's maybe some clarification on that.
Another reason why I wish we had a noise professional.
Yeah, I would love
Because
that.
I'm not a noise
Me
professional.
neither, right? So I also, because on that note, the dBs and the dBAs, they're very different, and the dBs are at a different frequency, right? And can measure different frequencies that are more on the infrasonic level. I also wanted to point out that infrasonic sound cannot be stopped. I mean, I'm not saying that should cause like a really huge limit to where they have to be far from civilization, but it is a good point that other people are making. My main point with that is when it's enclosed, or people try to enclose it in any way, even your body, it resonates and it creates even more vibrations, especially in the body. And apparently it can travel hundreds of miles. But of course, with the caveat that as it doubles in range, it goes down six decibels. So that's why you have a good point there, where there is a distance, right? Where it's much more died down. It may be less harmful, but it would be nice to get a sound expert, or even a vibrations expert, or a frequency expert, or all together would be amazing, holistic, to be able to kind of educate us on what not necessarily distance, but what ranges are proper for the human body, just because there are studies also done by the NIH and by the CDC that show that this level of resonance can cause nausea, vomiting, headaches in a lot of people. It was like a 51% in these studies. So I would love to be able to at least go into clarification on the dBAs and the dBs, and also go into clarification on which frequencies, right, that we want to keep in mind and take note of. And of course, the sound person would be amazing.
Am I right that we would like some flexibility here, not only based on our current knowledge, but in the future, what noise is doing to us?
Mm-hmm.
What do you
I'm
mean
not sure.
in the future?
Well, I don't want to, I don't want to, you had a response immediately right before that, but I want to add, it seems, we would like this proposal or this resolution to adapt to current research. So if we discover that a certain noise level is actually harmful, we would like to be able to adapt that. Is that something we could just revisit whenever we revisit the ordinance as it becomes more and more pertinent?
Yeah, and one more thing, sorry to interrupt. I just want to note that I will send out these articles to the whole task force so that we all can go over them too. I'm not trying to obfuscate or anything, but Also, I was going to say something about, I'll get back to it. I want you to respond, Mr. Hall, sorry.
Well, in the zoning ordinance, there is no future. You adopt an ordinance, and if you find out later you need different standards, then you need to amend it. Because once you give out an approval, someone is investing money based on that approval, and you can't change the standard after that for them. But you can always amend the ordinance to have better standards, which is what we're doing here, hopefully soon.
And one more thing I wanted to add was these studies were done a little bit later than the World Health Organization document was put out. That doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it is helpful to note that it is, like Ms. Rodriguez said, it's later research. I would also like to point out that the World Health Organization in the 80s actually did used to deem infrasonic sound as harmful. For that note, of course, that's earlier research, right? So I just wanted to point that out from the research that I was doing.
But then they backed off of that,
They
and
did.
they adopted the current standard.
Yes.
And in fact, right now, I mean, there is no, I cannot find any widely used standard for low frequency noise.
Right. And in the research I found where they used, I want to say dozens or more peer-reviewed research journals. They used all of those to show that there is a good limit, actually, that we could possibly abide by. I want to leave that out there in case we want to go back to that, because it sounds like we might be deviating a little bit from this, but I do want to get more clarification on the DBAs and the DBs for sure, and then see if we can circle back to this part for sure.
I think just to kind of bookend my comment, my question about the adaptability, I think what I'm trying to get at is we do need to settle some kind of a timeline, I guess, for firming this up, but we can return to that. Any additional comments on the noise issue? Yes.
John, is there any other of our ordinances that set limits for like noise or well, maybe even dust, I guess, like at the property line of the business that you're, I guess, regulating, as opposed to like you're talking like maybe going more to like on a bigger lot anyway, like closer to the primary structure on that lot as opposed to the property line of that lot. Would this be if we were to go to the property line of the proposed data center, would this be something new in that respect?
Well, it's something new, but it would only apply to data centers.
Yeah. I just wonder if we weren't kind of setting a little bit of a precedent. I don't know, not necessarily, but a little bit of a precedent if someone had issues elsewhere with something in the county, noise maybe especially, but maybe even something like dust or something like that caused by, or maybe even smell. I mean, garbage transfer station or something like that, or livestock operation. Just some thoughts anyway.
One thing I also wanted to add, in the research I was doing, based off of those research journals, they actually did reference something called ACGIH. Apparently they do actually publish widely used standards for pollution, and even noise, and they do have suggestions for limits, and that's actually one of the things I was referencing. But they are not a lawmaker. They just operate strictly as a scientific association. So I thought that might be interesting to you as well.
To piggyback what you were saying, you know, I'm a next door, and there's been talk about, is it Emulsa? What's that company? Emulsa? Yes. People have been complaining about. Oh, sorry. People have been complaining about the smells coming from that on that or that site. And so there must be some kind of ordinances about noise and smell and things like that? No?
The county has no specific noise limit that they've ever adopted. This is as close as we came, was in this text amendment that eventually went nowhere. The nuisance ordinance does not include any specific noise limits and doesn't even refer to pollution control board standards. But that's what I use as my guide when I think there's a problem. Does it look like it's exceeding what the pollution control board limits are? So the more we could have numerical limits that everyone agrees to, the better off we are. But at this point, none of our ordinances refer to anything other than pollution control board.
Kind of to Mr. Hall's point on the setback, you get out in the country, it's not only plausible, it's very plausible that, you could easily say from your residence, you could go to a mile to a property line in cases. And so I think we probably, whether we say it's this many feet on a lot of, whether you say an acre or less to it, whatever you set that at, or beyond that, then it's, to the residents. I think we'd have to have something like that because, like I said, you could, certain situations, you could really gerrymander things and really expand that out way beyond what we're intending.
I want to check in here. You need guidance, right? I'm wondering, are you getting what you need from this conversation? I know we have additional questions that we'd like to explore, but you need directions, right, from this committee on how to draft this. So I guess, again, as a reminder, right, we have at our next meeting on August 31st, a public review of the proposed ordinance, right? So if we need a change, we need to decide that we need a change. But for now, do we have any final thoughts, I guess, for Mr. Hall and how we want to move forward, given this timeline that we have?
I'd like to take like a straw poll. It sounds like you're both leaning towards to the residence, not to the edge of, to a residence instead of to the edge of a property, which is fine.
Primary structure or whatever.
Yeah. Primary structure. You're good with like park and all that, like we talked about.
Yeah, I am.
In my part of the world, the parks are all around residences, so that's not an issue. I mean, that takes care of itself. So parks I'm not worried about. I could see where, and again, it's how long you're going to, how much you're going to try to micromanage. I could see where you might have more of a setback for a school. I could almost see in the case of a school, where you say double it or whatever you do. I mean, and I would hope in the case of something like this, they would be doing everything they could to stay away from that situation, and so I doubt that it would create any barriers because I would think that would be something, any type of industrial situation like this would be looking to avoid. So, but yeah.
I try to avoid hoping. And
Well,
we're making the reg here. We can tell them to do that, right?
Yeah. Well, that's why I say I think if you did that, I doubt that anybody's going to blink an eye at that. So.
And I do have some suggestions for sound, but I would like a sound expert to help with that for sure. If you would like to write them down, I guess, so that we can review them later. The ACGIH recommends a ceiling limit actually of 145 dBs, not dBAs, so that's a way different measurement, for 1/3 octave band frequencies from 1 to 80 hertz. And 2, a ceiling limit of 150 dBs for overall sound pressure. That's something that not a lot of our other organizations consider is pressure, because with more pressure, there is an imbalance of sound, and that causes the resonance that can cause people to get sick, and of course bodies in general, so livestock and everything. And that would be also at 1 to 80 hertz. And apparently, according to them, a ceiling limit should not be exceeded at any time. And again, they are not a government agency, but they do help with creating widely used standards.
What does the acronym stand for?
So it is American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygienists. So they actually help government agencies create standards.
Aaron.
Thinking about a sound professional, someone professionally could do that. I don't know if we would have budget to do any of that. And I don't know how long. Just asking John, I mean, this is maybe kind of a little bit of a wild question. Do you have any idea how long it would take to find somebody and how long it would take to perform such a
And Kate, have you tried
task?
before? Have you tried already?
I tried to get experts to speak. No one for testing. I'm sure that would be a different situation, but I did not have luck getting anyone to come and speak.
I would just say those ACGIH limits they are, it seems to me they're very high limits. I found one paper that reported on the noise output of a generator that was not shielded. And the highest noise and it broke it down into the octave bands. It went down to like 20 hertz. And as I'm recalling, it wasn't over 116 dB. So these limits, I'm wondering if these limits are really intended more for indoor settings where the building enclosure makes this, you have to control the noise even more when you're inside. That's why I don't know that they would be I'm willing to look at it, but I don't know that they would really do much when we're already starting with nothing closer than 1,000 feet to the generator. I have to feel like we're going to be well below these limits, but I'm willing to look into that to the extent that I can find anything.
For sure. And they are dBs and not dBAs, which I understand you understand for sure. And that's why you were responding. But it's also the pressure level that we are considering here. I would hope. Again, hope, sorry. But I would want to consider pressure level as well, because that can cause the huge imbalance in the sound. I don't think that's something we've considered yet. So I'll just mention it there. And yeah, I mean, the research articles that use ACGIH as a reference also reference lower levels as limits. That's why I would like to share these documents and see if we can come up with something that's more reasonable for humans and livestock too. Because if they are too high, I mean, I would like to know, and I would like to know if it is based off of only indoors. But from what I saw, it was for indoors, but for something that was outdoors is what the setting was set for. So that I'll share it and see if we can come up with something that makes more sense than that.
If we did have a data center and we had some concern about noise, who is it that would come in to do the testing then, if we don't know anybody?
Well, we used to have probably one of the more renowned folks in the country, Dr. Paul Schomer, lives in Champaign. He has quite a reputation in noise, but he's also actually been retired for several years. I don't know that he's still active. But again, we have an expert here in the community, but I don't know that he's interested in doing work anymore because he's getting on in age. He has worked with Mike Hankard when there was a complaint about wind turbine noise in Vermilion County. They published a study that proved there was no violation. So he certainly is qualified. Whether or not he'd want to come back for a stint is a different question.
So it sounds like you're proposing we need the data and the numbers. Denise, if you could share those. But for this, because we can still revise this later, I'm fine with giving you the direction and looking for everybody giving you the direction of that number at residents, at places where people are. What, however we want to get to that. The CCS example has a good one. If we want to go with that, and that is paired with our setbacks, which are 1,000 feet, although I was wondering if they were 1,500 in Aurora's ordinance. Are you sure? Because the modeling is out to 15.
It was 1,000 feet if there are backup power generators. And this is 1,000 feet whether or not there are backup power generators.
What was their limit if there were no backup power generators?
They didn't give one.
Interesting. Because cooling is its own, that's the hum. If you watch the videos online, those aren't running their backups. That's just the cooling hum is what people are detecting. I really should have looked up some just typical numbers at existing facilities so we could have a context of kind of
What kind of numbers?
decibels.
Oh. Yeah, I've tried to find, it's hard for someone who's not a corporation buying backup power generators to even get the noise performance of backup power generators. Sometimes you'll get a single number. I only found the one report that actually broke it down into the various frequencies. And as far as air conditioning systems, I mean, those are all unique systems. So I don't even know how you would know what to model, because every HVAC system is custom by definition.
What would we be able to, just for like convenience of redundancy with the pollution control board standards, would we be able to have both a single standard that's easy to measure, somebody can measure it at their property, get their phone out, have a number, and also the pollution control board numbers? Just thinking that way they don't have to like go through a different process if they want to do the pollution control board numbers. You're not following?
I'm not following you, because the pollution control board limits are not going to get your 45 LDE, and they're not going to get your 45 dBA.
Right. I see what you're saying.
It's gonna be higher.
They're going to blow, if they're hitting this, they're hitting the pollution control board standards anyways. Oh, no, never mind. No, you're saying it's the other way around. They'll blow this before they blow the pollution control board standards.
I guess you kind of 45 dBA or 45 LDN. I'd choose the 45 dBA simply because I think mentioned it earlier, the idea of how I mean, again, how are you supposed to say you can't perform business, period? If they couldn't meet the lower noise levels overnight, the 45 is a little bit, it's just a constant number. 45 dBA, just a constant number. You don't have maybe the chance of, I measured it at 8:01 or whatever the actual time limits would be, and it was, 1 over on the LDN. Well, okay, if you would have measured it, let's just say 8:02, it would have met it. Well, you're going to nitpick about the one. I could see something like that maybe coming in. To me, the 45 dBA as of we sit right now, how we sit right now, the 45 dBA at like the 1,000-foot separation from the primary structure, residence, gathering place, works for me.
So just the 45 LDN, that is where at night it lowers. Is that correct? Okay.
Well, not just at night, but also in the evening.
In the evening, yeah.
yeah.
It kind of stages down and
Yes.
then back. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I got to admit, we got into this, sound wasn't what I anticipated being the biggest tripping point. And I realized several weeks ago, this was going to be the thing that was going to cause the most heartburn. And I mean, the power and water part is relatively simple compared to this. So here's where we badly need the state to step in and come up with something, and this is where the lack of leadership from the state's really hurting us, because we are not going to have the resources to really study this and get it down, like we need to. So But anyway, so thanks for bearing with me. Well,
I was sorry to go back to the size of the data center, but I agree with you, Mr. Hall, that we should do the lower threshold.
Was that to the first point of 24 versus 36?
Yes.
Okay, let's open that up to conversation. It was the first main point that Mr. Hall asked for thoughts on. So Dennis saying 24.
Yes.
Does anyone have a different opinion?
I was just curious what, like, what's in the county right now? What's the biggest we've got? 5?
5.
So I would go maybe 10. Just put it right above where the county's at. Not to propose a new one, but my thought as we were doing that, the reason why, my concern is that we would limit ourselves for fear that we would scare off the little guys. And that hasn't seemed to happen. So I'm fine with having the threshold be lower. If anybody feels strongly about a 24, to me, it's like, okay, we've got an existing data center that presumably hasn't caused a bunch of complaints to emerge so far, the 5er. So we put it above that, but not too far above that.
And the one reason I agree with that is because I'm pretty sure when we talked about this before, someone said that our largest here in the county is 10, right?
No, it's 5.
It's 5? I remember someone saying something about 10, and I was also into that number.
I think that may have been the Blue Waters at the U of I, their
yeah.
supercomputer facility. I remember someone saying they thought it was at 10 megawatts.
Right. And I agree. I don't think the small ones can be really scared off with the other policy amendments that we would make. They would not be scared off by that kind of consideration.
If I can pause this really quick, I think Mr. Levy can clarify, right? You have a point of information? If I'm guessing what's in your head.
Yeah. So what I've heard for the U of I data center, which I've used, is that I think it was built for about 24 megawatt peak. It probably didn't use quite all of that when Blue Waters was at its largest, but it's 20 or so megawatts.
Thank you.
in theory, everything we're talking about, the noise, everything, the smaller ones should have no problem meeting the guidelines. Is there anything you see that, I guess if you start saying you have to do studies, I could see where that could be a bigger problem for a smaller one, but like if we talk noise levels, things like that, a smaller one, isn't it going to make less noise, by definition?
Well, when you say smaller ones won't have an issue with the standards, these standards, I don't think any of our current data centers would meet these standards as far as separation. As far as noise, I think they would meet it, although they were reviewed under Pollution Control Board noise limits, and they didn't even come close to the Pollution Control Board noise limits.
They were well below it?
Yes.
Okay.
But this 1,000-foot separation to a nearest dwelling, none of them would meet that.
Yeah. Okay. It seems to me that in the case of the sound is one area, I think we could do just a blanket, we don't have to say small, large. I think we could say, here's the regulation, for data center, period, couldn't we? Is there any reason we couldn't apply the same? I understand setback, and like I said, I know there's some areas we'll have to modify it for a smaller one, but.
Well, if I were the owner of a small data center or wanted to get into small data centers, I would be wondering, why do I have to meet the standard of a hyperscale data center when there's any other number of other industries that actually make more noise and you're not doing anything about them?
Okay.
I actually was going to ask, because this talks about total power rating, and we just talked about peak being 24. Is total the average? Or what is total power rating defined as?
It's the maximum total that you would expect it to be drawing.
Is that like total peak average or just peak?
Peak.
Peak, okay, thank you.
They basically run
Perfect.
Mr. Sage.
No, I think that we stick with the 24. We're here to look at large data centers, correct? And if we're comparing to what's at the University of Illinois, I don't consider that to be a mega data center by any means. And if it's already 20, I think anything that size or smaller, that's a pretty small facility. I think that we stick with the 24.
I agree, actually.
Hot dog. The other thing I would add, I drive through Lebanon, Indiana, to see my family regularly. And that is where a 1 gigawatt data center is being built. I didn't even know what was being built, but I was like, there's only one thing this can be. It was just cavernous. It was massive. So, man, anything lower.
I did have a question. The 10,000 square foot, that processing area, if I wanted to build a tower data center, would that get around the, how do you measure the square footage? Or would it see each floor? Great. I think we knocked out one of the questions. Well, part of the noise. I did the next, I saw you made an amendment. We talked about kind of hitting for noise, when we're talking about the Joliet data center, they're building that thing in 4 phases, and it's basically a full data center at the end of phase 1, and then it's 2 full data centers at the end of phase 2. So it is important that we did phases, steps, and I see that you did that, you added that here.
Where's that added at? I was just going to ask that.
Well, we were looking at 17, and it's somewhere on it's the next page after 17. So we are on 18.
Okay.
4, I think B is the phrasing of, so it says within the first year of big data center operation for each phase. I guess I think they kind of finish and they kind of come online. Would it be unreasonable to gate this, to gate it on hey, before you, the first thing you do when you fire up is prove that you meet the sound standards?
That's what this new version.
Well, but B says within the first year for each phase.
Yeah. I'm not so keen about having it be the first thing that happens, because my view is anytime you're running something, it takes a while to get up to full speed. I don't know, but that's just what made sense to me. Also, I overstated the cost of these noise studies. When I went back into that previous zoning case, the number I got from talking to noise experts was about $50,000 for a noise study for a wind farm, post-construction noise study. So I added $10,000 to that, and the fees here at the end, it's $60,000 fee for a noise study and $60,000 for a vibration study. Aurora requires a vibration study as well as noise study. I figured you wanted to follow the Aurora. And both of those are, if it ends up costing more, you pay the full cost.
Mr. Hall, you raised an excellent point about it takes a while for things to be up and running. When we say within first year, can they do it whenever in that first year? Right away? When stuff is just barely being built out, or?
They could.
Oh, well,
Well,
your concern is very valid.
It says of operate. I guess there's
Of operation.
it should be after they open. I don't know how incrementally they turn these things on. I imagine you turn on a building, right? The building has an HVAC system. It's got, so, but I could see them tossing in more servers. And how well understood is phase maybe is the
Well, we asked them to specify phases in their application. Now, I don't know if we're going to know if they go back in and add extra servers. We never have that level of detailed knowledge about exactly what's going on. I think this is the best we can do. But if we see a 100,000 square foot first building, you know, the logical thing to ask is, what's the most processors you're going to have in that building? They would tell us. That would establish the limit for that building.
I do at least appreciate that it's during operation. So it's the first year of actual operation. And of course, during any phase that happens, so.
Yeah. What we found with the solar farms is for them to go online, they need to have permission to go online to be in operation in order to test to see how much noise they are making while in operation. So we've had to amend the way we permit these. So we'll be giving a sort of like an initial authority to go online premised upon meeting all of our standards with the post-construction noise study verification. And then once they meet it, they'll get a full compliance certificate. So that's one thing we've had to deal with.
Okay, thank you.
I'm also on this topic. I'm interested in including language for obvious budget concerns. That's something like when it says the county board reserves the right to hire a noise consultant. I would like that to be at the expense of the developer. Imagining that would be I see
That
both
is
Kate
in
and
there
John.
separate from the requirement to do a post-construction noise study. If it turns out later that we're still getting significant complaints, it says there, the county board shall require the owner-operator to take reasonable steps to investigate and mitigate excessive noise, including a noise verification study. And then the next thing is, but we reserve the right to do our own noise study, in which case you have to reimburse us if there is a violation.
Love it. Thank you. Okay, so where does that leave us with direction? I mean, do we have, I mean, the first two, we've got 24. It seems like that we're in, do we need a straw poll for that? I mean, 24 versus 36? Okay, and what clear things need to happen in the next week or so on noise?
I think John needs a little bit of clarification on on-site clean energy on A27. And then also the modular nuclear reactors, small modular reactors, or any other nuclear-based on-site energy production methods are prohibited if we want to keep that in there at this point in time, which I'm personally fine at this point in time, keeping nuclear reactors out. Idea of keeping it simple for now.
And again, someone could always, 20 years from now, they could request a waiver because of the new federal standards or whatever.
Or 20 years from now, 5 years from now, the county board then.
And that can be amended then, right?
Yeah, the county board then says, oh, these are these are working now and they're out there, and maybe the state by then, I'm just saying, the state would have regulations and okay, we can bring them into our county. We're comfortable with them, so they could go through the process of amending this ordinance. And then personally on the 25 or 50%, to a degree, I don't know if I like requiring them to have any.
I guess
just because of the extra
how much land does that take to put 50% in 20?
If anything, I would go with the lower 25% if we're going to keep either of those two numbers in there because of the land take up. Unless, I mean, granted, maybe because figuring it would probably be solar, and just from the land take aspect, I would, if we're going to do anything, I would keep the smaller in there, especially if it's going to be, which has been talked about in this committee, the idea of how you verify it, if it's going to be in the county, as well as the data center itself.
I definitely wouldn't want them to be purchasing credits. If we're going to do this, I want it built here in our county.
I was actually going to mention that. That's a good point. There are other counties out there that have data centers that actually put back energy into the grid based off of, regulations and policies that they have there, that they're able to put that back in the grid. So that would That would be cool.
Well, when we say on site, what are we saying it has to actually be on that site? I mean, I would think if it, regardless of what level we're asking for, if it feeds into the grid that they're pulling off of, that would, to me, would serve the purpose. I mean, if somewhere 30 miles away still feeds into the grid and it's a more, appropriate place for solar, whatever, that's, to me, that would make more sense. I guess I'd like some clarification on when we say on-site, exactly what we are asking for.
Well, on-site means literally on-site.
Yeah.
Now, if you're prepared to, I suppose we could say, or evidence of a renewable energy source established in another county, they would have to provide some documentation of that. What would that documentation be? An authorized permit for construction for X megawatts instead of doing it here in Champaign County. I suppose we could write some language like that.
Again, I'd like to keep it in Champaign County. If we're gonna be doing this thing and we're trying to get jobs out of this, we want the jobs to be for people here locally.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily saying out of the county, but I mean, if you say on-site, I can see where there's going to be situations where someone could go a few miles away. And I mean, for that matter, if you could go, on top of a little landfill or something, something that's less usable as farmland, but more appropriate for that, then. So, I mean, the big thing is that it attaches into the same grid, so we're replacing the power that they're going to take. So I don't know if maybe you want to leave it as on-site. Maybe, you leave flexibility in there where you say, as long as it's within so many miles or within Champaign County, then that's acceptable. I just don't want to make it on site. I could see where you could come up with a worse solution than being a little flexible with where they establish their, the on site or the clean energy.
I mean, there's a benefit. I think the reason why Aurora drafted it as on-site was maybe just so that they could verify, that they could know. And this is part of what we talked about was like, how would we know, if we said anywhere in Illinois, as an example, how would John, receiving an application, know that a solar farm is paired with this data center? Do you think if it was within the same county, you would be able to say, oh yeah, this is paired?
I had better be able to say that.
Right, because there would be another. Okay, so there isn't a concern about verifiability for as long as it's within the same county.
I don't see any concerns.
Well, surprising no one. I would like to see these things be entirely powered by renewables, but I understand that that's not the same desire. I'm aligned with within the county. That seems fine to me. I mean, within the state would also be fine with me, but I understand the priority of keeping jobs local. So I can see the value there. So I'd still like to see this number certainly not go below 25, but closer to 50 feels right. And the Power Act would see these things powered entirely by renewables, not on site, but by renewables. The specifics in the Power Act right now are actually just anywhere within, has to be deliverable, which means within the same grid, which is huge. And that's actually an issue that labor has raised is like, if we're going to do this, let's bring it local. And I understand that argument for sure. So yeah, I was supposed to do some homework about the feasibility of like a wider offsite. Like what would it look, how would we verify if it was in Illinois? But if your concern is keeping it in the county, I'm fine with that. I think your concern might be keeping it out of the county and away from prime farmland.
Well, not necessarily. Well, yeah, in part, but I guess I wouldn't personally. In the county is just the easiest. And as Mr. Hall has mentioned many or several times anyway, they can always ask for a waiver. And I just thinking about too the idea. Okay, what if they wanted to put one right on the county line, and part of it goes over? I'm just using it, Piatt County. Well, that's out of the county, but let's say that piece of property, because there are properties that go over county lines. Not all roads are right on the county line, so there could be two separate landowners. Maybe their property is divided right by the county line in technicality, but combined together makes the piece that this developer for the data center so part of that would be out of the county. But if that's all contiguous ground on site, that's right, that's on site to me. So that makes that part a little bit easier, I would think.
As I understand Mr. Hall's argument, though, if it's in another county, that's going to be a little harder for him to, within our county, he's got a lot more leverage to verify.
Yeah,
so,
but they can always ask for waivers.
well,
So
they can ask for waiver, but I would say maybe the language be, within Champaign County, and then they can ask for a waiver.
yeah, and that just keeps it cleaner, in my opinion.
But it's the same
And Kevin,
thing
are
with,
you like, if it was built on the edge like that, do you feel like that's still local job? You feel good about that?
Yeah, I'd feel comfortable with them getting a waiver for something like that. Yeah.
Where have we settled on 25 and 50%?
So, I mean, one thing to
favoring.
keep in mind is that any large data center needs to be powered, and if they're not doing this, they might be, buying or building new fossil generation. So, another reality is that this could mean a new gas plant that's getting constructed, which is maybe jobs that people might want, but also that's new air pollution in our county, and new fossil pollution in our county. So it may seem like a lot, but it's a lot no matter how you slice it. And clean energy is we need to be figuring out how to decarbonize, and this is a pathway to getting a lot of clean energy built. So
Again, I think the Powers Act, aiming for 100% renewable, that makes sense to me. If 50 is an easier threshold, or it sounds like there's a space trade-off here that's important. Does anybody else have strong feelings on this?
If they would let us keep, the state said 100% renewable, is there the possibility they'd go along with saying, within your county, if you want to say 50% has to come from your county, we're okay with that, and they can get 50% somewhere else and still meet that 100%. But, that way we could still, as opposed to 100% of it coming from, Sangamon County or something, we could maybe keep, at least keep that much of it from here. And then back to the verification, thing. So to me, I see the value in having it in there, even though, I think hopefully if the state does get the Power Act passed, requires 100%, maybe we could hopefully still get the leeway within our own county to say we'd like for this much of it to be here, to be local.
Yep. Also, it's on-site clean energy. Maybe I'm conflating two questions. That was the reverse of what I needed to do. We had also a question about the backup generator, right? I'm wondering how much in backup power do we want to commit, especially if it's possible, to renewable sources of energy? I know we heard from several sites that were considering data centers. Something that a key point of concern was diesel fuel powered generators. Am I conflating the two questions? Would it be helpful to? I see John nodding here.
I guess on the like 50%, was the Power Act set up to be kind of like they've done with the wind and solar? You cannot be more restrictive then, or it was granted it was overall, and it required in the power anyway. It required 100% renewable, and you said it was within like a certain.
It doesn't. So just to be clear, the Power Act does not require 100%. It creates a speed to grid incentive, so non-financial incentive that will push them higher and higher in percentages towards 100%.
Okay, so.
But it wasn't
even a requirement at this point in time. If it would have passed, it doesn't sound like there'd be any issue at all with us saying okay, even if you're going to bring a data center into Champaign County, or at least you're proposing, it doesn't sound like there'd be any conflict at all with us saying, well, we want 50, 25, or 100% of it, of the renewable in our county. It would still go along with that Power Act because they'd be within the same grid, obviously. So if we set it at 50, let's just say 50, if they had 50 that was over, again, I'll just use it just because that's I've used it before. It's only a county away, but still that would be 100% for them for the Power Act for their incentives, but we'd still beat us with the 50. So yeah, again, I guess just looking at from farmland, I like the lower for this county, but I mean, I'm not going to say I'm dead set against 50.
If I, as a way to meet you in the middle here, if I do want to spend a little bit more time researching how John would be able to verify off-site, and I don't know if it'd be too onerous, but like a 25-25, at least 25 in Champaign County, and then 25 in the state, would that meet both of your, as a way to get us up to 50?
I see that.
Your mic.
Okay. I don't know. I think if we're going to say 50, I think we say, again, I just keep thinking the verification thing. And if we start going somewhere else in the state, Mr. Hall or whoever has to follow him might have a very difficult time, being able to verify that. If you say, well, we're getting this much power from this adjoining grid over here, well, from verification standpoint, I think having it as local as possible aids that. So
I was going to say, if we want something even at 25%, it would require a lot of acreage for a certain size.
If it was all solar, it would be a fair amount of acreage, yes.
For 25%.
Yeah, it would require acres of land, yes.
Quite a lot for certain sizes, so it almost sounds like, which I'm not going to necessarily share my opinion on whether I like it or not, but it's almost kind of like banning, right? Because at the same time you're saying if you want to provide 25%, you need this much acreage of land, which could be about 1,000 or so for 100 megawatt for 25%, not even 25%, maybe. So like if we were to restrict it that way, would we get sued is kind of my biggest concern.
Well, just for comparison purposes, our 150 megawatt solar farm down near Sydney, when it was finally constructed, didn't use more than about 700 acres. So the data center in Sangamon County is the maximum rating was 638. 25% would be 150, roughly 150 megawatts. It'd be about 700 acres.
Okay.
And I just made a change up there. If you want to go to whatever the number is, I think it does make sense to provide flexibility anywhere in Champaign County. It doesn't have to be on site. It just has to be in Champaign County, for example. That would be an easy way to do that. As far as verifying in other counties, I don't know that it would be that difficult. We actually would want to get the compliance certificate issued in that other county, as well as some documentation that the company, the data center here in Champaign County, was one of the petitioners or somehow related to the solar farm that was done in some other county. I think that could happen, particularly if you've got a data center that wants to see it happen. I think it would happen. So I wouldn't be too concerned about specifying, either in Illinois or anywhere in the MISO grid.
So if we said Champaign or adjoining counties?
That would open it up.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but it'd be, yeah, it'd still be local.
So I guess we're trying to meet everyone's needs here. If the baseline is 50 in Champaign, do you still have concern with that? If so, do we make? Again, we got a shrug. I'll take a shrug.
Well, I'm not. I said I wasn't dead set against.
Yeah. But I guess that's so if we did, so then we could do a 25 in, 25 out, but then, we're losing Champaign jobs. We do 25 in, 25 adjacent counties, which is like probably people travel that far for that. We could do, if you think it's verifiable, and I do think there's things like power purchase agreements that document like, that's our energy type stuff. Anyways. I'm fine with 50 in Champaign County. I'm fine with 50 in Champaign and its adjacent counties if we can solve the verifiability question.
I'm also okay with 50.
I agree. I also need to note that, the county board's going to need to consider, and this is at the at the advice of our attorneys that we've consulted with, we would need a blanket project labor agreement stating that we prefer union labor across the board. So that's something that we're going to need to, it's something that's contextualizing this conversation that is coming. So I just wanted to give everybody that certainty.
Meaning, so because we haven't talked about labor, but you're saying like doing labor for just this project labor agreements wouldn't have been allowed, but the board is considering doing something more broad.
Oh no, I'm saying that this is going to be baked into any county project that we consider. That our project, I know it because I drafted it. It includes target hiring numbers. So, for example, minority, people of color, also women, also veterans, all these targets. And we have specific targets. We have requirements for people to recruit in certain areas. We would like to apply that to this project, and it would just
but what you're proposing is for everything, not just for data centers, or is it specific to data centers?
It's for everything.
Great.
And we're already doing that, but this would make sure that it applies to data centers. Does that make sense? Yep.
So could someone clarify for me the task force thinking on this section?
I propose 50 in Champaign and adjacent counties with the caveat that I'm going to do some homework with John to confirm that that's possible. And if we come back next meeting and we don't think we can verify that a project outside of Champaign County is the data centers project, then I would propose we go to 50, but we can maybe have that conversation in 3 weeks. Is that
50? You mean in county? That works for me.
So
Yeah, I'm good with that.
50% in Champaign County and adjacent counties, or adjacent counties.
Assuming it's verifiable, yeah.
That means it could all be in adjacent counties. Would that be acceptable?
Let me clarify. That seems to be the trade-off. If we want renewables, we have to consider outside places to put those technologies, right? It would take too much space here in Champaign County.
I don't think it would
Is my understanding correct?
I think there's tension over the space. I don't know if
Well, my impression is that most
landfill, then okay.
most adjacent counties to us also have what we would consider best prime farmland. So whether it's there or here, it's still probably going to be best prime farmland.
Not as good as ours, though, right, John? Nothing's as good
we're
as
not the
ours.
only ones.
I mean, in the ideal world, we find like these projects are finding the worst possible, like these projects are going on brownfields. They're going on the low yield land that, ideally could, be put to a more productive use, farming the sun. So expanding to other counties just gives you a bit more reach and opportunity to find projects. And I'm sensitive to if you think that we should do 25-25.
That's what I was wondering. Is there a way to do 25 and 25? We do 50% and say half of that has to be in Champaign County.
Can we put in something that you look at unusable land?
That will sort it, especially if you let them go, that'll sort itself out because they're going to try to find the cheapest place they can get.
And there's incentives for development on, at least on brownfields and things like that, like sort of industrial land. In terms of, I don't think there are incentives to put it on lower quality farmland, but I think you're right that that's just cheaper land that'll get picked up.
Yeah.
Is there, do they have to go through a different process though as well to create these solar farms? Don't they have to get a special use permit of some sort and go through the zoning board and do all that?
In Champaign County, yes. In Piatt County, yes. In Ford County, yes. But in Vermilion County, it's a different process as it would be in Douglas County. Different process.
Pretty soon, the state has even tightened the restrictions on wind and solar siting, so pretty soon that'll maybe all go to the ICC, depending on how you read the law.
Okay, I have a dream of getting us out of here at 8:30. Where else do we need to give you
I guess-
sign-offs for, John?
Everybody okay with 3 staying in for now with the nuclear prohibiting the idea it can be? I mean, that was just, I mentioned it, but just again with the idea that, yeah, it can be amended or waived or whatever.
I have the direction I asked for. I still owe some information, DBs versus DBA, and I think apparently we're all going to get more information on at least how the ACGIH regulates infrasound to see if that can be added, but I don't know at this point that it can be added, but I'm willing to consider it.
I wanted to hear about your CBA, Community Benefit Agreement.
I love that introduction. Yes, so I mean, in my mind, the missing chunk here is a community benefits agreement. We've checked in with our lawyers. We know we can do it. No one's going to scream at us if we include it. At my mind, I mean, base level, 500,000. The parts of a community benefits agreement is first that it exists, and then we also designate a fund. I'm thinking 500,000 annually. Categories for funding might include, but are not limited to, continuing to fund our pre-apprenticeship programs, Champaign County District Schools, non-operating costs. I've seen their salaries. Also affordable housing, and other environmental efforts and ways that we need to invest. So, I mean, I think it's a drop in the bucket for them. It means a lot for us. To me, that's the spirit of a community benefits agreement. It's saying we are doing this, we are taking up space in our community, we are using community resources. Here is how we will begin to answer that effort or those resources that we are taking. Just a reminder, I've also seen other, I'm not sure if this belongs in the CBA or not, but where do we talk about tax exempt status? It'll be a cold day in August if we let something out of ELUC, right, that allows for another Carl Hospital, right? I would like to make sure that no tax exemptions are given. I would like that to be baked into this ordinance. I'm not sure if that belongs in the community benefits agreement, but that is a topic I think we need to make sure that we're signaling on. So any thoughts on a community benefits agreement? The amount we're proposing, if it's too low?
New concept to me. So the 500,000, will that come, are you from everybody?
Developer.
I mean, everybody would pool?
The
Or would
developer.
Every developer would put 500,000 in?
I mean, the person who absorbed the building is who, maybe that's a good correction.
Okay. That's not, okay. All right. So regardless of size, you know, a 5
I'm
megawatt,
guessing,
50
I mean,
megawatt?
I'm sticking to 24 now. I mean, if it's larger, we could discuss
So
more.
you're saying the big ones,
The big-
24
what
larger.
this ordinance is discussing, yeah, the 24.
Okay, all right.
Well, just to maybe deepen that point a little bit, we could consider, depending on, I mean, well, so, putting a number on something like this is almost like pre-negotiating in a way, which could be good or bad. Like, do we think 500 is, and 500 annual is a solid thing. But in the Power Act, we have a fund that we create, and it is segmented by the size of the data center. And it actually starts higher than that. For 50 plus, it starts at $2 million a year. So, and if we get a hyperscale, if we get Joliet, if we get a 1.8 gigawatt data center, 500,000 a year might be underselling our negotiations. But I don't know, does that mean that, does the county start with a weaker opening hand if this is here? Or is this simply just the opening hand of, well, you have to do at least this, but I don't know what CBA negotiations look like from a county perspective. I don't know if there's any examples of CBAs written into county law and anywhere else.
Not yet. I mean, not in Champaign County, at least. I mean, in my mind, it's not a negotiation, right? I mean, this is cost of doing business here. This is invitation, come to our party, bring your own beer.
Well, yeah, but it's a negotiation if you want to get more beer.
I mean, again, 500,000 as a starting point. I would like to have discussion on what that initial number should be. Of course, we could accept more money, I suppose. Like if it were to come to the table and more was recommended. I think some things that I'm interested in exploring or at least nailing down is how that should be distributed, through what body, how should we determine what is and is not an eligible fund, if that makes sense.
And yeah, that is going to be challenging, I think. The hard part is, okay, you have a pot of money, who's allocating it into what? And it was very difficult in the Power Act as well, and I'm not sure we have a solution. We form a separate negotiating group that either the county board or the Illinois EPA, depending on which version, would form. It's complicated. So I mean, I think we would want to, if we want to investigate this more, really look at some text and think about it. The cleaner way to do it is that you just write into the ordinance, you're putting this much money here, this much money here, this much money here, which is sort of pre-negotiating that CBA. That would be the administratively easier way to do this. Do we know these are legal? You looked this up. We could do this as a county?
It's legal. Questions, concerns? I mean, we could just leave this all up to Kate and just she could pull numbers out of a hat, portions. Yes, Deb.
I just have a question about risk, with these AI rogues. That's a concern to me. I mean, are there safeguards about that kind of thing? That what they could do to the other things in our county.
Deb, are you proposing that we can use the fund to protect ourselves from OpenAI's chatbot accidentally hacking into county software?
Yeah.
It's a real risk. I don't know how we use the fund to address it, but it is a real risk you're identifying.
Yes. I'm concerned about that. I mean, and they don't really know how it happened or, how to stop it. So to me, that's a big concern that it could go into our hospital, schools, and the county, software, everything.
Is the risk different if it's in this county or in another state?
No, it's not. That won't be specific to the data center.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm imagining would be like a AI disaster relief fund that the county could use to we get hacked. I mean, people are going to get hacking is going to start becoming really common. It's going to get in government. I mean, how many water systems just got hacked across the United States from, and that's all, AI powered. And so it's an interesting idea to have the county have a emergency response fund for if something bad happens. But I don't know what that would look like in terms of implementation.
I also wonder how much secrecy would be important for that. I mean, you don't want to advertise that you have a fund for recovering possible ransomware, right, on all county governments and open for business, right? I don't know what that would look like. I think the idea of an AI disaster relief fund is wonderful and something that I would like to look into more. But John, am I right? These would be things that we look into possibly with the lawyer that we're consulting with. This isn't something that we need to check by you.
Well, this is the first I've heard that we can do community benefit agreements. I'm wondering if that is outside of the zoning ordinance. Because if it's in the zoning ordinance, then it starts to sound like you're selling zoning. So I'll trust whatever the attorneys say, but this is the first I've heard of it, so that's all I can say. It's news to me.
Okay, we can certainly follow up with them. Any other questions that we should jot down when we have that conversation with attorneys as far as what's legal, what we can and can't do?
Is this in the sphere of what we're doing? The CBA,
Yeah.
everything? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is, again, cost of doing business. If you're going to build a data center, this is what we would, yeah, like the tech on there. Anything-
Is there, I hear your concern about selling zoning permits. Are there model, like when you make when a company comes and says, here, I'd like to propose this project, it includes these benefits for the community. Has anything like that ever been built here?
Well, we had a solar farm recently that was very controversial, and outside of the zoning process, they made a contribution to a local organization. But that wasn't part of the zoning. It wasn't discussed in the zoning. It happened at the same time, but the zoning decision was made separate from that, at least if you look at the facts. Now, if the state would actually adopt a law authorizing community benefit agreements, okay, that's a different ballgame. The state has authorized that, but the Power Act hasn't been adopted. The Power Act is the only thing I know that authorizes that. So again, this is all news to me, but if we can do it, then that's great. I doubt that it would be in the zoning ordinance, but I don't know.
As a brief sidebar, just so the Power Act does not touch local siting at all outside of banning non-disclosure agreements. So it doesn't address siting.
I mean, Carl used to give money to the schools to provide multicultural teachers, you know, because they'd bring in international students.
They sure took it right back.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So I don't know if that was in their zoning when they were building or something, or
I would assume they have some agreement with the city, payment in lieu of taxes or something like that, which is, again, they're a home rule government, and they've got a lot more power than a non-home rule county board. So I'm pretty certain it wasn't part of their zoning, but it was done through other means. And again, maybe at about the same time.
they're a home rule. Who, that Carl is a home?
No, Urbana's home rule.
Oh, yeah.
It's extra authority for a form of government to yep, enact
Right.
resolutions, ordinances. All cities have it, counties do not. We would have to opt into it. So, for example, we hear a lot of people asking for a ban on data centers. For a ban on data centers, we would need home rule.
Not all cities or villages have it. I mean, Rantoul.
4 municipalities in Champaign County are home rule.
Opt in if they're under a certain population.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, concerns?
I have a question maybe for John. How does taxing work? I mean, the CBA is sort of in the sphere of taxing. What is the tax rate on a large data center? Is that set in zoning? Is that set in the tax code, a county tax code?
It's set through, I mean, the state laws governing real estate taxes. It's done through the supervisor of assessments.
And is there a special class for data centers, or do they just fall under some sort of?
As far as I know, there isn't any at this time. There is special designation for wind farms and solar farms. Maybe there will be someday for data centers, but there isn't currently.
So who determines what it gets taxed at?
The assessor and the review board.
Okay.
Okay, I have one question, if you don't mind. If we can go back to, I got page A26. And I'm looking at the water usage effectiveness at .2. So that would be under, it's A 26, I guess, yeah.
And what letter?
5C, yeah, 5C.
826. 5C.
Yeah. Back a little bit more yet. Yep, right there. So that point two, I didn't know a whole lot about water usage effectiveness and what that is. So I did enough studying on it just to be dangerous. but it looked at what I could understand is that the average for data centers is at, I think, 1.8. Is this too aggressive going to point two that we're chasing people away, or is that just, like I said, I don't know enough about it to really speak to it, but just kind of what I was looking at.
This is based on what Aurora adopted.
Okay.
And as I recall, they were a little more aggressive than average. I don't know that this would, make it an infeasible ordinance.
Right.
Yeah, so for the bulk statistic, the water technology that they use really changes those numbers quite a bit, right? So when you have like once through evaporative cooling in that, where they're just sucking in water and spitting it back out hot, which then evaporates away and has high water usage, those numbers get pulled up a lot. So this is a number, and it's a feasible but a efficient, it's a water efficient data center for sure.
Just want to make sure that that's a feasible goal for somebody.
I think Google's come in below this regularly, which is the nicer data centers,
Yeah.
but
that's what we want.
But yeah, it is what we want. Yeah, so it is doable for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Flipping around, got to 28, and this is another thing, I don't know, as people learn more about these things, have to address them, and if we avoid having a huge one, then hopefully never be an issue. But just a couple days ago, I was reading about a situation where area, big data center, and there was a brownout, not related to the data center. All the generators kick in, so this thing goes offline immediately. This thing just lasted a minute or so. Power comes back online, and this data center is off. Everybody else gets a power surge and fries a bunch of things, people's houses, businesses, and everything. And it's one of those, oh, okay, so maybe we had to think about having them stage it in.
Page 827.
I was on 28.
Yeah, but page 827, I believe.
Okay.
O2B. On-site resilient storage, that's at least meant to cover that.
Okay.
I guess maybe an expert. I'm not an expert, so hopefully that would be enough of a coverage at 50%. But maybe that would be my only question, is if that not being an expert, if 50% is enough. But I'm not going to say it isn't.
What I understood this case, it went 100% off. So that could very well be what we need.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing pretty major load consumers, concentrated energy usage in ways that we haven't really dealt with before at scales. And so we're seeing stuff like that is just, something trips on and off, and the grid is there trying to be like, oh, now we have to meet a gig less of demand. Oh, now we have to meet the gig back. So there is just a lot of, we're seeing stuff like that start to happen because this is unprecedented in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Okay, we've covered a lot here. Any next steps? I mean, clear instructions that you need from us? Want to make sure that we're giving staff? Okay, all right, excellent. Okay, so I guess my next question is, Kate, can you tell us what other the date of what to expect from the next meeting? How about that?
So for the next meeting, we the plan that I'm aware of at this point is that we will have the meeting here. It's going to be in 4 weeks, I believe. We had to push it back 1 week just due to meeting room availability. But we'll open this to have plenty of room for members of the public who would like to come in and speak. And then really it's up to you all and John how you, I mean, I can prepare in any way. I don't know if you want to go through the entire thing, if you want to organize it into impact, or I don't know exactly how you want to do that, but I can prepare in any way for that meeting so that you can get the feedback that you'd like.
I mean, so it seems like there are key areas that we need to revisit. I'm hearing noise at least. You were about to say something, Andrew?
Yeah, so you're sort of imagining a interim public input phase so that we can start hearing what the public is thinking about this and give us a chance to respond to concerns, ideas that are raised there, and then we'll come back to sort of the one after that. We kind of come back and do our deliberation on what we're hearing. Great, that sounds great. I love that.
If I may jump in, my goal would be to try to follow up with as many of these answers as you requested before that, so that by the time we get to that meeting, you're not just making decisions and then also trying to review it all.
Wonderful. Any questions about the next meeting and what to expect? Yes.
If we're going to have the idea public review of proposed ordinance, do we want it to be like it is at county board meetings or even this task force where ultimately it's public input and there's not really a chance for any back and forth? Or do we want it to be at least somewhat more like a ZBA meeting where there is some back and forth? And especially if there is some back and forth, because we can limit it. I mean, we can limit time for any one speaker. If we have, granted, we don't necessarily always hold to strict 5 minutes, but we have it at 5 minutes generally for all our meetings. You can always make an exception. But do we want to set some kind of a limit on any one person's time, for a back and forth conversation? That would be my thoughts. I don't know. I can see the pros and cons of both. We definitely don't want to get into a yelling contest, which is in part why the county board, or not necessarily yelling, but just a back and forth, and that's in part why the county board. We're very good at not
yelling at the county board, Aaron.
What's that?
We're very good at not yelling at the county board.
So those are just my thoughts. I mean, again, I can see pros and cons of both. I'm not exactly sure which way I would vote right now, but that was just to bring that up, the idea as to how might want to.
I guess I'm curious, at this event, are you seeing it more like an informational session where you're kind of like presenting on this packet and then people are giving feedback, or is it like general data center feedback that people would like to share, or is the idea that they'll read the document and come with feedback? Like, what exactly are you hoping to get out of it?
That's a great question. I'm hoping for feedback on the document. I know that folks will come in ready to argue that we ban all data centers. I don't think there's a way we can stop people, right? We know that we cannot do that. But I would like it to be as tethered. You're good. I would like this to be as tethered to the document as possible. I think summarizing some main key points and features that might be new to folks is, I think, especially the community benefits agreement. That's going to be something we need to explain a little bit. I think limiting that presentation 10-15, right? I think public input 3 to 5 per person, depending on the amount of input that we get. I was imagining that as kind of a town hall setting, right? I wasn't thinking back and forth, whether between us and the in constituents or constituents amongst each other. You're ready to raise your hand.
Would we be? I mean, if somebody's providing input that I have a question on, you can't stop me. No, I'm just kidding. But like I would, I would, seek to be able to go back and forth. Like, so to that end, it seems helpful to have a little bit of back and forth.
I think the way that I would enforce it would be in clarifying questions, not argumentative. If somebody raises a point that you don't like, just sit on it. Oh,
Contentious
that
is
was
probably
random.
what I was looking for. We don't want to get contentious.
Or, I mean, I think an exchange of ideas and clarifying questions, right? If you can add more insight into the, whatever that person's asking or a correction, I think that could be helpful. Again, we don't need, if you simply disagree, you don't need to say it every time, right? I think we're used to that idea.
Can it be kind of like, sorry, you should go ahead.
Can you say right from the beginning that we cannot outright ban a data center? You know,
I sure will.
and why? You know, I think that's important for them to know, because people are going to come in right away and say, ban it. And we have to say, once again, we've said that we cannot ban them, you know, so if we and then cut it off that way.
You can also have like a little squirt bottle if somebody suggests it in the comments.
It says no ban on it. I was going to say, could it be kind of like how we do the beginning of the meeting, except continue that? Kind of like how we have public input and there's always a response after. It could be kind of like after someone talks, and if someone has a point to raise, it goes back to us just for a little bit, and then it goes back to public input, kind of like that, as opposed to having a full-on conversation, I guess.
I'm thinking how we would organize this into an agenda. I think having the two segments separate is a good idea. I think if there's some need for, okay, if somebody brings unique expertise to something, yeah, we can bring them up, but I think that should be during our portion, not theirs, right? And part of that is to protect, I don't want to say the sanctity, that sounds a little, but I mean, like, the public's time is the public's time, right? And I don't think I need to be punctuating that in any way. I think 3 to 5 minutes per person, I guess, I think we typically cap that at like an hour, right? I think we use that as the, I guess, baseline. Obviously, I think keeping public communications in a separate portion of the meeting has never stopped us from responding before.
Okay.
Right? I know again, if this person is an expert or we need information that person can uniquely provide, sure. You know, but I think,
I mean, I appreciate
using some
nuances.
discretion, right? Yeah. Yes.
I guess if we're going about this as the idea for public, more input from the public, not that we can't suspend the rules or change our agenda, but I don't see setting a time limit period on public input overall if there happens to be that much public. I mean, I definitely don't want just one person, so we need to set some kind of a time limit on per person, because then you could get have you want to look at the right or the wrong person, they could take up the whole evening, which could be good or bad. But personally, I guess I'm looking at this meeting, what we're kind of calling it anyway, is the public input part, with us maybe having some interaction, is probably maybe the only part of the meeting, and we don't really figure there's any time for anything else.
Sure. My only thought is, I mean, we have some key areas in which we need to follow up, right? Noise is a segment of this. We need more information, right?
We've got more meetings, right?
Does that mean we don't touch on it until we go over it, maybe, in the public review? Or we can, maybe, and there might even be a sound expert that shows up.
Yeah, if it yeah, to that, then if it came up, we could definitely discuss it then. Okay. But I don't know that we would.
We don't have to ban.
We could present, because I mean, we already have, you know, we're going to have the proposed draft. Now, we could have in the beginning, if we get some more information on the sound and the idea of anything else that we need clarification, we could have a time set of aside for Mr. Hall to go over those changes from what we're seeing tonight, or answers to our questions, and then we could have some time for us at the beginning, that to me should be at the beginning, and then maybe some time, maybe try and don't set a hard limit, but maybe try and just limit ourselves to not asking a whole bunch of questions if we don't, to not get into the minutia, so that we can, the absolute minutia, so that we can get kind of the information that we want a little more clarification to from tonight or previous meetings. So then we can get into the public will hear it that way, and then they can make comments on, hopefully if they've read look through the ordinance as is and then any corrections or additional would be set up. And again, maybe have that at the beginning. It's kind of backwards to how we usually, obviously, county board, we usually have public input first, but it makes more sense to me to, again, try and limit the task force discussion to corrections. We need to have some discussion amongst ourselves, but just not make that the whole meeting, obviously, and then just go into the public part and have that be the rest of the meeting. And then that just lasts however long it lasts, and unless it would, it goes on and it gets, I'm just throwing again out there numbers 10 o'clock and we're like, oh, we're going to call it quits, folks, or something like that.
I like that order of events, putting forward any clarifications or things that we need more advice on, major changes, and that way the public can include and adjust their own remarks accordingly. Does that sound reasonable?
Is that on John then to do that?
I guess an update. I mean, I would like to revisit the questions that we've left off here that we needed further clarification on. Does that make sense? And where we landed on those?
Yeah, and I believe one of those is the noise limit. There was no consensus on noise limit at this point.
I think we wanted other standards to reference. I think that was me. Okay, I think we wanted to review something. There's a ghost in the building. I thought we wanted to review other possible standards. Am I misunderstanding that?
No, you are not misunderstanding. We do want to review more standards. Another thing is just, like Mr. Hall said, settling on levels and what exactly we're measuring. I know that in the monitoring section there is a part about pressure. I would just like to include that if possible when we go over the standards again, if pressure can be included in actual policy. I was going to say something else, but I keep blanking today. I think another thing we wanted to go over, I think that's all we needed to go over for that. But something about public input. That I think that might even drive us if the public actually does end up having input on that might actually give us even further direction. Not necessarily because an expert says something, but maybe there's someone with more experience with standards and guidelines that also has a big appreciation for sound.
I think the direction Emily's talking about, where we lay out, here's what we're still working on, let the public do their input, 5-minute time limit, but however long it takes is what it takes. And then we just kind of play it by ear after that, see if we want to try to pick up anything. I mean, it could be after that where you don't know. We might be drained, we might be confused.
We have more meetings, right? So we
Yes,
can take, and I think so I would propose we open the meeting, we present, here's who we are and why we're doing this. Here's what we think, the note about here's what our powers are. We can't ban them, so we're proposing this ordinance. A brief overview of here's what's in it. And I think we call this thing not even like the proposed or the draft. I think it's just this is the current state, because to me, I feel like we're at the 2/3 point here or whatever. We're still looking to be deliberating over, we'll have some new noise ideas that we won't have discussed at all, right? So I think if we propose that this is close to, this is what final looks like, that's going to change the tenor of conversation. But this, to me, is a real important interim public input process. And then we go for as long as we go. And then if we, for some reason, feel like we got a lot of energy, which we probably won't, and then we pick it all back up at the next meeting to talk about the details again.
How many meetings do we have scheduled so far?
So we have 2 more.
2 more? Okay.
We have 2 more scheduled after this one.
Okay, thank you. I just want to put a fine point on that. This will not go on for 2 years. Like, we need some forward motion here, right? So I think 2 meetings is a good number. We can extend if we need to. I would like there to be a very clearly justified reason for convening the task force. Additional past 2. Does that make some sense?
Next time, and then 2 more after next time? Or is that just one more total? So the public.
2 more total.
And then the final one is the final one.
September.
If that becomes unreasonable, we can establish at the next meeting. How about that? We check in, we talk about new business. But again, I mean, I would like us to have, at least in our minds, an end date so we can kind of, adjust our own schedules and work pace accordingly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. The sound is probably the biggest thing, I guess, that we're thinking about. So, yeah, when it comes, I like, Andrew, your thought process on the meeting. Yeah, and back to my whole, maybe, mention it that we are looking at other sound, maybe if it can be done, a little bit of a, idea as to what that might look like. But for now, just keep it at the 45 dBA. I mean, present it to the public at the 45 as the 45 dBA. But say, hey, this is one thing that we're looking at still. And then, if it leads to further conversation with the public and maybe a little bit of back and forth, whatever, so be it.
What do you have for a date on the final meeting? Or what is currently the final meeting? Is it, maybe you already got it on my phone too.
4 weeks from now is the 31st. So we're talking about the public hearing type thing.
21st.
Yeah, 31st.
Okay.
Would be our next meeting for the public.
It's just 3 after that. It'll be 21st. It's on my calendar for 21st. My calendar.
Yeah, it is. Nope.
I don't trust you.
I don't trust you. So I keep on thinking.
It is the 21st.
21st, September 21st, okay.
So as of now, August 31st and September 21st.
If we get a bunch of public comment and we're like, okay, we're missing some key parts, I feel like that's when at the end of public comment we say, hey, think it's going to be at least, not just the next one, but one more after that to like figure, because we have a new topic that we need to grapple, whatever that is. I think that, but we can make that call after we get that public input.
You're going to lose me and Aaron after the 21st, which might be to your benefit, but
we're gonna lose you.
We'll be farming.
Getting into harvest is the only issue there. But
yeah.
So.
Okay, unless somebody is going to let me know that the building is burning down, I would like to wrap this up. I have no chair's report. I said 8:30, it's 8:33. Next steps, I think we've exhausted that topic. I now call this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.